Welcome to the Explainer, everyone. Today we're unpacking a case that is absolutely legendary. We are talking about Leonard v. PepsiCo, the fighter jet loophole. It's easily one of the most absurd, fascinating, and just wild legal battles in the entire history of modern business. We're looking at a story where corporate advertising collided head-on with human ingenuity. It's a tale that involves massive multinational corporations, millions of dollars, and believe it or not, a piece of actual military hardware.
Okay, let's dive into this. How in the world did one single teenager use a marketing loophole to legally demand a military fighter jet from a soda company? I know, it sounds like the plot of a comedy movie, but this actually happened. And to truly grasp how this wild scenario came to be, we've got to look at the environment that created it. Section 1. The Peak Cola Wars.
So picture this. We're in the mid-1990s. Pepsi and Coca-Cola are locked in this fierce, global battle for total dominance. Every single commercial had to be bigger, it had to be funnier, and it definitely had to be more exciting than the last one. The marketing budgets were just massive, and the competition was completely ruthless. During these intense cola wars, Pepsi decided to really weaponize customer loyalty with a massive campaign called Pepsi Stuff. The concept was brilliant in its simplicity, right? Buy Pepsi, collect Pepsi points from the packaging, and then redeem those points for merchandise. You could get t-shirts, caps, leather jackets, sunglasses, mountain bikes, the whole shebang. The more Pepsi you bought, the more points you earned. And people absolutely loved it. Kids across the country started hoarding these points like they were buried treasure. But, the marketing team at Pepsi wanted to make a really huge splash.
Which brings us to Section 2, the Harrier Jet commercial.
To really sell this Pepsi Stuff catalog, they aired a commercial that pushed the limits of the promotion just a little bit too far. And that became the inciting incident for this entire saga. The commercial showed a teenager arriving at high school. It starts normally enough, First, we see the kid wearing Pepsi sunglasses, then a Pepsi leather jacket, then more and more Pepsi merchandise. Each item flashed on a screen with the exact number of Pepsi points required to redeem it. But then came the grand finale. The student lands right in front of the school. Not in a car, not on a motorcycle, but in a Harrier jump jet. A real, actual military aircraft capable of vertical takeoff. And right there on the screen, they slapped this massive number. Harrier fighter, 7 million Pepsi points. Obviously, everyone watching the television at home laughed. It was clearly an exaggeration, meant as a joke to show that Pepsi was way cooler and more extreme than the competition. Or, well, at least that's exactly what Pepsi believed.
Because somewhere in Seattle, a young business student named John Leonard was watching that very same commercial. But unlike millions of other viewers across the globe, John didn't see a punchline. He saw an offer. He looked at that 7 million point price tag and he didn't laugh. He just started calculating. Now let's look at Section 3, the 10-cent loophole.
You might be wondering, how could a teenager possibly acquire 7 million points? Drinking that much soda is physically impossible. Not to mention, it would cost millions of dollars in grocery bills. Well, John went and read the promotion's official rules. The fine print that almost nobody ever bothers to look at. And he discovered something absolutely fascinating. You didn't actually have to collect every single Pepsi point from soda bottles. The rules contained a specific clause allowing customers to buy additional Pepsi points for exactly 10 cents each, as long as you submitted a minimum number of genuine points first. This completely changes the entire game.
So the crucial point is John's exact methodical strategy to execute this brilliant corporate heist. Step 1, collect the minimum required real points from a few actual bottles of Pepsi. Step 2, buy the remaining millions of points directly from the company for 10 cents apiece. Step 3, mail the check and the official forms directly to Pepsi headquarters and just wait for his fighter jet. He didn't need to buy a warehouse full of soda. He literally just needed cold, hard cash.
John did the math. To buy the roughly 7 million points required for the jet at 10 cents a point, it would cost him $700,000. Now, I know what you're thinking. $700,000 is a staggering amount of money for a student. But let's look at the context of the asset he was actually trying to purchase.
The true, actual value of a military Harrier jet is in the tens of millions of dollars. Even a used, decommissioned military aircraft was worth vastly more than John's calculated price tag. Seeing this incredible return on investment, John went out and actually found investors. He pitched a businessman who agreed to finance the entire plan. Together, they filled out the required forms, gathered a handful of genuine Pepsi points, and confidently wrote a check for exactly $700,000 and $8.50. And then they put it in the mail. Just imagine the scene in the Pepsi mailroom when someone opened that envelope and realized a customer was legally, according to their very own printed rules, demanding a military fighter jet.
This leads us right to Section 4, the courtroom battle. So Pepsi flatly rejected the request. They told John the commercial was obviously humorous and no reasonable person would believe they were actually giving away military aircraft. But John, he refused to back down. He sued Pepsi, sparking an absolute international media frenzy. The courtroom battle became one of America's most famous advertising cases, and it really boiled down to a very clear legal standoff. On one side, you have John's argument, Pepsi made a public offer, I accepted it, and I meticulously followed every single rule you printed in your catalog. On the other side, you have Pepsi's argument, no reasonable, objective viewer would ever believe this commercial was a genuine, binding offer for military hardware.
Now, Pepsi was terrified. If they settled with John, it might encourage thousands of other customers to look for similar loopholes. If they fought it, the lawsuit would be broadcast on news stations and newspapers globally. They chose to fight. And get this, reports later estimated that Pepsi spent around $2 million defending the case through legal fees, publicity management, and related costs. $2 million just to block a teenager's $700,000 loophole attempt.
Ultimately, the judge agreed with Pepsi. The court ruled that the commercial was an obvious exaggeration and therefore not a legally binding promise. John lost the case. He got no fighter jet, he got no secret millions in a settlement. On paper, it was a total and complete victory for the corporation, but the damage to Pepsi's pride and the lessons they had to learn were completely permanent.
Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, the multi-million-dollar lesson. Because while Pepsi technically won the legal battle, millions of people had now heard the story of the massive company that got sued over a fighter jet. So shortly after the lawsuit, Pepsi quietly updated their campaign. If you looked really closely at later broadcasts and materials, the required points for the Harrier Jet were changed from 7 million to 700 million points, a mathematically impossible number to reach via that 10-cent loophole. They also entirely revamped their rules to make them crystal clear, just ensuring a mistake like this could never, ever happen to them again. Today, this lawsuit is an absolute classic. It's literally studied in law schools across the country. Business students analyze it in university courses, and it serves as a permanent flashing warning light for marketers everywhere. It really proves how one tiny, seemingly harmless oversight in an advertisement's fine print can snowball into a global headline and a multi-million-dollar legal headache. And this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate takeaway from this whole incredible saga. John Leonard never got his jet, but one teenager forced one of the world's biggest corporations to its knees in the courtroom. It reminds all of us that sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't money and it isn't fame. It's simply reading the fine print better than everyone else in the room. One commercial, one loophole, and a story the business world will literally never forget. I hope you found this breakdown as fascinating as I do. If you enjoyed this explainer and want more unbelievable true stories about business, money, and the world's biggest companies, please make sure to engage with this content. And I want to leave you with this final thought. Let me know your verdict in the comments down below. If you were the judge sitting on the bench that day, would you have made Pepsi hand over the jet? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.